So you have a tender read and you love overlanding. You have plans to do it big on the trace and some super glamping. One ideas, deep news and reviews, a podcast the first rate and here just for you. You don't have to think about it, join us and be about it. Something interesting we want to hear about it, come on let's talk about it. Welcome to Waypoint Overland's Random Waypoints podcast.
Sponsored by Midland, communication for every adventure, the industry leader in radio communication technology and innovation for over 50 years. Sponsored by MyMedic. Sponsored by Tembo Tusk. Sponsored by Shower Pouch. Sponsored by DeMoss Collective, mission built and made for mobility. Sponsored by BrewTrek. Sponsored by Hard Impact Designs.
Always remember, the opinion you follow should be your own. Just consider the things stated here to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online.
Hey, what's up, Mike?
How's it going, Phil? Glad to be back for another week here of the podcast.
And we have a special podcast this week. I'm excited to do this one. This has been something that many people have talked to me about over many years. And especially in your position, I'm sure you've had even way more people talk to you about the same subject matter. And from my understanding, this was a big topic of discussion at Overland Expo just last weekend. So for those, let me announce what it is: built versus bought versus having built. And let's be very clear on what that means. That means we're talking about travelers, overlanders, nomads, building a rig, and whether or not they should buy it and build it themselves. Should they find one that is already prefabricated, is already from A to Z set up, it's a turnkey situation. Or having it built, you go to an outfitter or wherever you go to, some professional, and you tell them what you want and they do it for you. And our discussion or debate is, which one is the best? Is there a best? And so on. So, Mike, you being a person who has been like you've pretty much been a common person that you see every year at all of the Overland Expos and the do-it-yourself. And the reason why you've been very popular is because you're known to be a person who builds your own rigs. So I think you're an excellent person to talk to about this. So not only do you build them, but you instruct others. You've actually even overlooked other people's work and given them advice. Don't you do something like that on your Patreon?
I do, Phil. I've been actually consulting with a number of people building their own rigs, and in some cases, having companies build it for them. But I've been consulting them on, what they are interested in and what they're looking for. So I'm actually actively doing a lot of work in that field. And it's funny you mentioned Overland Expo because I have actually taught that class in the past. I did not do it this season, but I have taught the build or buy class. So there's a lot of discussion. Those are three very good alternatives to ultimately end up with an Overland rig or a Nomad a rig, or even something that you're going to be able to use for weekends or maybe for long trips or whatnot. So it's going to be an interesting discussion today.
So starting out, I'm going to be a newbie. And I'm going to ask you some very basic questions, and then we'll dig deeper.
Okay.
So I haven't bought a rig yet. I'm going to buy one. I'm going to buy, and I'm coming to you, Mike, for some advice.
Mm-hmm.
Should I buy first a new or used vehicle? And when I buy that vehicle, should I build it or should I have someone else build it? Or better yet, should I go, like I said, the third option, go for a turnkey? Now, I know that's a very general question, but in general, what would your answer be?
Well, so let's backtrack a little bit. There's in life, I call it two main things that affect everything, right? Time and money. So that's the first thing let's talk about, right? So the most expensive of the three options, in my opinion, likely is going to be buying the turnkey, right? So whether we're talking about, and by the way, people know me pretty well as being a DIYer and building vehicles over the course of the years. I have actually done the turnkey as well. So I'll give you an example of this. I bought a Jeep JK, brand new from Jeep through AEV, American Expedition Vehicles, completely done and set up. Bumpers, winch, rooftop tent, snorkel, everything on board. So I have done that. That, in my opinion, that's what you're talking about is buying it completely done and fabricated already.
Yes.
So that is, I think, of the three options, is likely to be the most expensive in comparison to. I mean, obviously, we got to do apples to apples, right? So if you're going to buy a completely prefabbed, set up, built out Jeep, that's going to be your most expensive option. Your second most expensive option is going to be to probably buy a Jeep and then have somebody custom make it for you, right? Which is our second option. And likely your most economical way is going to be buy that same vehicle and do it all yourself. So that brings up a couple things. So that's your and that brings up time, right? So we talked about money. So those are your three options of money, but then you got to think about time. So obviously buying the truck completely done is the shortest amount of time, ranging all the way to you doing it all yourself, going to take the most amount of time. So those are two big considerations. And then your next consideration is probably also the most crucial thing is, what is your skill set? Everybody has a different skill set. And, now having said that, I will tell you that most people think that they do not have the capability of doing stuff themselves when in fact they really do. Through watching YouTube videos or learning from other people or just in their own background, they just don't realize it, that they actually have the skill set. They're probably afraid to do it, right? I think we all have those same fears about certain things. For me, as an example, mechanical, I'm about to do an operation on my truck called Eco Hubs, which is going to basically changes the gearing in each one of my wheels. Well, in concept, it's super easy. You pop out, the current 2-to-1 gearing and you pop in the 1-to-1 gearing. Sounds easy and whatever. I have this phobia of, that's gears. That's like the transmission. That's like, so although I can probably easily do it, I'm weighing whether or not I'm going to or not, or do I just pay a guy to do it? And then that's a fear-based thing, I think, more than anything, because I'm quite sure I could do it. There's instructions. It's not, I've read it. I've watched the video. It's not that hard. But anyways, those are really the considerations in those three things: time, money, talent.
Okay. So
let's preface that.
I have chosen that I'm going to do it myself.
Okay.
So do you recommend me trying to do the whole thing all at once or in stages?
Well, so now we move on to the next bit of discussion is, what is your goal? What are you going to do with the vehicle? So is this going to be for weekends? Is it going to be for, month-long trips? Are you going to live in it full time? So, all of these things come up. And not only what you're going to do with the vehicle, what kind of vehicles are you considering? Because let's think about it. Like, there's a couple things that go in it. There's building your own camping setup, let's call it. There's mechanical, which is the actual vehicle. So that's something different. And then there's like, I'll call it life on the road things. So there's like 3 different things that go into all this. And you might be really good at 1 or 2 or 3 of them, or maybe not. So, and I find, and this is number one thing, and I tell people, number one most important thing is get out and do it, right? And it's not about spending more money and getting everything that you need. Sometimes you just don't know until you do. So if you're a complete newbie, to be honest with you, I don't recommend going through in a big elaborate build of any kind if you're a newbie, because I don't know that you know what you want to do. I'm talking from experience. I'm sure you have the same, Phil.
Yes. Okay, so I agree with that. So I'm the newbie again. And so obviously I really, really don't know what I want. I've just been watching YouTube and social media, and I think it's exciting. I haven't gone on a trip, but I've got money and I can afford this. So I want to get a vehicle. So It sounds like what you're saying is I need to make it just roadworthy enough for me to get the job done, drive around in it, live in it, travel in it a little bit, and that will dictate what is done to the vehicle.
Yeah, so I'll use myself as an example. The truck that you see on the screen behind me, if you guys are watching this, or if not, my current 6-wheel drive store in Stevenson, I built it fairly quickly, but you got to remember, I had already had this truck before, a very similar one. So I was working off prior knowledge. I kind of already tweaked down what I like to do on the road. So I've learned. I didn't start out with shit. I mean, I don't know how many trucks this is I've had in my life. I probably had 25 trucks. I definitely didn't start on truck number 1 knowing what in the heck I was doing. There's no question about it. And by the way, you grow over the years, you change too, and you're where you're going and your needs change as well. So it's not. Don't ever look at it as. I guess my big piece of advice here is, don't go into it and go, this is it.
Right.
Putting everything into this. This is going to be the thing. This is going to be perfect. Have you ever ended up with something like that, Phil?
Well, I'm going to give a personal good example of what you're saying is true. I remember when I built my Jeep out originally, I put a 3.5-inch lift. I had 35 tires, and I went to Tahoe, and I was going to do the Rubicon. I did about 2 miles of the Rubicon, and at about 2 miles, you can still turn back. Yep. So there was a decision to make. And I was like, this is not my thing. Yep. And I turned around.
Yep.
I built my whole vehicle up to be this rock crawler in the beginning. And I ended up taking a $2,500 suspension and another $1,500 worth of tires off of my vehicle and starting all over in the very beginning of my vehicle. So you can waste a lot of money trying to make a complete vehicle before you actually know what you need.
Yeah, agreed. The thing I would say, if you have any kind of experience, or if you have any kind of lack of being afraid, I guess, and you are willing to do any of the stuff yourself, the more things that you do yourself, the more you know about your vehicle. And down the road, when you're on the road, the more you'll be able to fix and very quickly understand what's going on because you had a very solid part in the construction or build of your setup. So if you asked me, forget about money, forget about time, and forget about knowledge. If it all, to me, building is the preferential way of doing it than going out and buying.
I agree.
Just straight up buying. There is a place for straight up buying. You don't have the talent. You have the money, and you just don't have time. You don't have time. And I'll be the first to tell you, if you don't have the time to do the build and you got to put all your time into actually doing the adventure, bless you. Go and buy the truck. Done. Because I'd rather see you doing the adventure than wasting the next 10 years in your garage trying to build something and never going anywhere.
So we're going to kind of be all over the place. So let's say I decided I am going to have this vehicle done for me.
Yep.
What do I need to know? Do I just sign a check or hand them my card and tell them to go for it? What should be my interactions? What should be my priorities in those interactions?
So I tell people that I'm consulting with, number one, find somebody potentially like me that has done this before and work with them. They have the experience having done it themselves to guide you in different directions. So I think that's a big thing. I always tell people coaching, and because that's what it is, it's coaching, right? It is always important. There's no athlete, no professional athlete in the world that would succeed at the level that they succeed at without coaching. So use it in this example. So I think I'd start with a coach. I'd start with somebody that's done it. First thing I tell people, I'm not a big one-stop shopper kind of person. So I don't think it's necessarily beneficial to have Joe's Garage, let's say, do everything on this vehicle for you. Because let's face it, just like you, they're not experts in everything. No one's an expert in everything. So, when you're talking about an Overland rig, you're talking about probably electronics like batteries and solar and maybe a water system and, storage things, door slides and fridge slides and what fridge to buy. And there's not one guy that's an expert in how to wire a solar panel and what fridge to buy. I'm going to tell you that right now. So oftentimes, and that's where you can come in, this is where there's a hybrid version of you're hiring somebody to do it, but you're involved in the process. So you can do your own research. I mean, let's face it. You want to find out what kind of refrigerator you're going to put in your truck. Well, you can go online. You can do a lot of research. You can talk to people. You could talk to your coach and, look at brands. There's how many brands of refrigerators out there? Dozens, probably. And you could be working on that. So when it comes down to your foreman, let's call it, maybe it's like building a house. You might have a foreman that's doing a truck. You go to that guy and say, all right, I just bought an IceCo 75-liter fridge. This is what I want you to install. So you're still in charge. You know what I mean? You're not, it's not one-stop shopping. And by the way, there may be things that you're good at. I don't know. Maybe you're maybe you're a great metal fabber or something, and you can make your own custom drawers and things. I don't know. Everybody has different talents.
A person who's a newbie, even if you're not a newbie, because you can always learn from somebody. There's always somebody that knows more than you.
Always.
Having that coach, having somebody valuable like you, let's use you as the example, is let's use you versus an outfitter for a second. At least this is the way that I see it. You're more valuable than that outfitter because when you go to that outfitter, he may know how the winch works. He may know how to install it. He may know how the tent works and he knows how to install it and so on and so forth. But that does not necessarily mean that he knows how these things work in the field. And that is a major thing. All of these things look good in the store. All of these things look good on YouTube videos when guys are pushing them on you. But when you actually use them, they may not be for you. And having that coach you can ask the detailed questions, or sometimes they'll ask the question, well, why do you want that, Phil? That's a good question to be asked a lot of times in the middle of your build. Why do you want that? What are you going to do with that? What is the need?
I'll give you a good example of that. I won't mention brand names, but this winter, when I was down in Baja, Mexico, a good friend of mine was down there, and he had a 4Runner, and he had a roof rack system on it, and it had mounted on lights, and it had storage on the roof and all this stuff. A lot of weight. There was weight on the roof, including a rooftop tent. In concept, like you said, Phil, an installer, let's just say that the roof rack system was a quality product from a real name brand thing. And on first glance at it, I looked at it and I go, yeah, it's kind of like sexy looking. It looked good. And we talk about this a lot. A lot of people, unfortunately, buy with their eyes about what looks good. It doesn't necessarily mean we all do it. We all do it. Doesn't necessarily mean it's rugged or that it's going to do what you need it to do. Well, this is a good example of this. The weight and the really bad roads in Baja, particularly all the washboards, it ended up snapping on both sides in the middle of this roof rack.
Wow. And
upon careful, I would not have noticed it. And by the way, it was installed by a professional installer as well. After looking at it, being a guy in the field, I realized, I go, holy hell, it's only got 2 mounting points. And there's a pretty long length of distance in between these. It really needed 3, which, by the way, he has a track on the top of a 4Runner. You could put as many mounting points as you wanted. It only had 2 on each side. So the thing buckled and then hit the roof of the truck and was, grinding into the roof of the vehicle. Mm-hmm. I go, oh, crap. So first problem I noticed, real life scenario, it's not strong enough. Mm-hmm. It's just not. It looked great in the showroom, like you said, seemed really good, looked sexy. Second problem, made out of aluminum. Well, I love aluminum.
Aluminum's dog me about this.
But guess what? Guess who cannot weld aluminum? Just about everybody.
Hey.
Particularly a bunch of guys on the side of a road in Baja. Now, if this was metal in Mexico, you get some guy hack welding, it wouldn't look good, but it would work. Mm-hmm. Nobody could touch this. It's aluminum. So guess what? He couldn't get the damn thing fixed. Right. So something to think about. But that's not what an installer or an Overland outfitter necessarily is thinking about. So a long story to explain what you're saying, Phil, but in real life, but I know because I live on the road. I'm out there. I see this stuff. I go, well, yeah, no, it sounds great. Not going to work.
And even with the aluminum and steel thing, like it even goes to the wheels. You can get away with aluminum in most cases, but if I'm your coach, I'm going to ask you where you're taking this vehicle, mm-hmm. and I may recommend, no, you need steel wheels.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good example too. So you have to look at all aspects. So when you're using steel and aluminum as an example, you're talking about weight, you're talking about price, you're talking about durability, how they react in weather, in cold and hot. What happens. Obviously, aluminum. I should say obvious. I say obviously because I know, but most people don't. Aluminum does this. It goes, boom, it cracks. That's it. Done. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying it's not very strong because it is very strong, but that's what happens. Steel, it bends. So these are things to think about. So I don't want to get tied down in that one thing, but that's why I don't like. I'm not a one-stop shopper. I like to. I am a big proponent of having the person owning the vehicle be, if they're not necessarily hands-on, their brains on. You know what I mean? I want you involved in your own project.
I feel like unless it's just impossible for you to do it, maybe you're putting together this rig and you're still in the workforce.
Yep.
And you want to have it ready by retirement or whatever. So you just don't have the time. There's some situations that you just don't have the time. I get that. But if that's not the case, my recommendation is, even if it's being built by somebody, if you can get permission just to stand around and watch what they're doing and be able to ask questions, you do it. Because when you're in the middle of nowhere and you're the mechanic, you're the medic, you're everybody.
Yep.
You want to at least have some kind of idea of where this thingamajig is that you need to fix.
Because that's the reality, Phil, is that, like you just said, you are everything no matter what, whether or not you want to be it or not. So, you and I could be driving up the Monkey Dugway and going camping up in outside of Mexican Hat or something, have a breakdown or something way out by the cliff or whatever. You might have to be a mechanic. You might have to be who knows what you got to, you got to be a medic, or like you said, you may have to be any one of these things or all of them. That's the reality. So you might as well learn as much as you can.
And we're kind of bumping up against it, but your mechanical issues could also correlate to medical issues. You may have been in some sort of accident or something, or
Sure.
you may have had some medical condition that made you have the accident. And now you've got to take care of yourself and you've got to take care of the vehicle. Well, if you have no idea about anything about the vehicle, that's going to bring up your stress levels for your health portion. I don't recommend anybody to go off and attempt to be a world traveler and they don't have any knowledge of the vehicle that they're in.
Always test every single piece of gear before you're on the trip, in your driveway, in your backyard, wherever. Test your tent, go through your medical kit. I've got one of those, as you do, big, huge medical kit. There's all sorts of crap in there. I've gone through that thing. I mean, admittedly, there's things in there that I'm not so sure I know what the hell they are. But I try to know as much as possible. And I try to put it in my brain. It's in there. I don't know how to use it. But hopefully when something happens, somebody around here does know. And I can go, oh, yeah, I saw one of those thingamajigs in there. I saw that. Right? Instead of, I've seen people with their medical kits in plastic still. In their truck in a plastic, shrink wrapped.
Bro, I harp on this and we're supposed to be talking about the built thing, but that's my pet peeve. How dare you not have an appropriate first aid kit, and how dare you to have never looked inside of it?
Yeah, exactly. But that's true of my build. So know your medical kit, know your solar panels, know why your inverter isn't seeming to invert. Know like, okay, I got a little water pump in here. How come it's not doing anything? Know the difference between 12 volt and 24 volt and 110 power, and what does this refrigerator run on, and what's an amp and what's a watt. Like, I know it sounds like, oh God, too much information, but I gotta tell you what, even if you have no time, you got lots of money, you got no time, you can't do the build, you can't pay anybody, and you go buy an earth roamer for $750,000. Great. Nothing wrong with that. I still suggest that you know how to use every single thing on the earth roamer,
right?
And know what's in it, right?
It don't matter if you're in the middle of nowhere. If you're in $1,000 vehicle or $1 million vehicle, you're still stuck.
Oh, that's right. That's exactly right. I laugh because we're talking about building. A mutual buddy of ours, I watch on social media, SirWilliamGoes. I just laugh because he's always, he's living in the back of, and I'm using it as an example here on purpose. He lives in the back of a 4Runner full time. And, he was joking yesterday on one of his Instagram things or something saying, what do you think? Should we camp tonight? And he's like, well, come to think of it, I camp every night. Just had to laugh the way he says it. But, he's been over the course of the last year, I've been watching him. He built in a different bed structure, and he took that one out and he didn't like it. And he's now he's trying a different mattress. And, so there's inevitably, you're always tweaking as you go. So that's something to know, whether you're building it yourself or you're paying somebody to do it. Just because you pay somebody to do it doesn't mean you're not going to sit down on your third night in the woods and go, boy, I don't understand this. This don't make no sense. Like it happens to me all the time. I'm sitting in my truck right now and I'll be like, I have reorganized my cabinets. I can't tell you how many times, because I'll be like, why is the coffee in there? That doesn't make any sense. I get it from over there. You know what I mean? Like, so you're constantly, when you're living in a tiny house, whether it's for a weekend or for a week or forever, and let's just, all trucks are tiny houses. It doesn't matter whether it's a big truck like mine or a Jeep or a Subaru, quite frankly. It's a tiny house. And you got to deal with the space. And none of us, no matter how big the truck is, none of us have as much space as you're going to have in a house. So these are things that come up. So that's why it's imperative for you to be involved. So I guess so far the theme of our podcast is be involved, whether or not you choose to build it yourself or hire somebody or even buy a brand new one. Hell, if you're at the Earth Roamer factory, you better get the factory. You know what I mean? Like when you take delivery of that thing, you better spend 3 hours having them tell you how to use every system on board.
I think more than 3 hours.
Probably. Which, by the way, right after this podcast, Phil and I, we keep mentioning Earth Roamer because obviously they're going to decide to give us free Earth Roamers. So we're going to head to the factory and we're going to be sporting Earth Roamers, right?
They called me already. They faxed over the purchase order. It said $0 on it. All I had to do was sign it, and I said no.
Yeah. Yeah. I got stuck at where it said 250 month payments or something like that. And I was like, what?
So you were talking about tweaks, and I want people to understand that it don't matter which one of these choices you pick, buy, bought, or have built. After you take ownership of that vehicle, once it's done, you are going to tweak it. You're going to have to tweak little things. So the point that I'm getting to is, since you're going to have to tweak it, even if it's built by someone else, you need to have an idea of what's going on so that when you go in and tweak it, you're able to tweak it.
That's right.
If you don't know where the bolts are, if you don't know where the wires are or any of that stuff, you can't even do the tweak.
That's right. So it could be something as simple as every time I go on an off-road trail, my refrigerator goes flying out its slide and goes across. Or it could be something like, I ran my rooftop AC unit and I can only run it for 4 hours and then run out of battery. How do I solve that? So one may be very technical and electrical oriented, and the other one might be a mechanical thing. Maybe the latch on the refrigerator is not locking down properly or whatever. But actively involved is definitely the way to be. And that's, you and I talked about this last week. That's one reason to go to rallies and expos and different things, to see other people's setups, to listen to other people's experiences, particularly if you're new to this. And you're not as confident. I will tell you, you gain confidence over the years. So in my example, I'll give you an example. I zero mechanical ability, but I've owned Land Rovers for so many years now. And took a Land Rover across Africa. You become a mechanic. Trust me on this, whether you want to or not. Suddenly I find myself underneath a Land Rover in the middle of Mauritania, taking the pumpkin off the back and taking the gears out of the rear diff because it had a problem and we had to put it all back together. Way over my pay grade, but you don't have much choice. So now I know how to do it.
Yeah, if you dig in after a period of time, you get to the point where there's a lot of things that when it happens, you hear a noise or you see a certain thing, you don't even go through the full mechanical diagnosis. You just, that's a fuse. Oh, I need to put that wire back. Yep. It's just automatic. You just know, I'm out of gas. Whatever it is.
Yeah. So
And we touched upon this either last week or the week before. We did a podcast about how people don't know how to do anything anymore. And I think this goes right into that. Even though people don't know how to do anything anymore, we're in a society and at a time now where you can learn how to do anything you want to do, especially in this overland genre of mechanical building vehicles. There's somebody that's made a video that's showing you how to do everything.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you that maybe this is the controversial statement of the day here, but by definition, I do not believe you can be an overlander without being partly a builder, a mechanic, a medic, an organizer. You need to be these things. Like, that's the definition of the sport. Like, if you're a personality type that watches television, needs to call, a company to come in to screw in a light bulb for you, this is not your thing. Never gonna be. It's not gonna be. And there are people like that. From what I see, travelers, overlanders, nomads have to be doers. And there is an element, a personality style in that you have to have some percentage of risk taker in your body. You have to.
You're not a civilian anymore. You're not living in the city anymore. Everything is on you.
Yep.
And I feel like if you're really a real overlander, all the things that you said, I agree with. But if you take pride in it and you have a hunger for that knowledge, it's not just about, I want to seek and explore. It's the whole enchilada.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, learning.
Yes.
You're learning and growing. You're always learning every new thing. So today I drove my truck. I'm in just north of Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I've got an oil leak. I've had an oil leak on this truck. It's a fairly substantial one. Well, at least it looks substantial. As it turns out, it's not leaking super fast. But anyways, I drove downtown today, and I admit it. I pulled out of the driveway this morning at 7:00 in the morning, and I had fear. Like, there's just so much oil under my truck. What's wrong? What am I going to do about this? What if nobody wants to work on this? A big orange truck I drive in, and the guys go, stay away. Anyways, so first guy I drive down to, drive in, he goes, hey, that's a nice looking truck. I go, yeah, it's got a Caterpillar. See, and this is stuff that I maybe couldn't have said 10 years ago, but I go, yeah, it's got a Caterpillar 3126 engine, 7.2 liter. It's got an oil leak. Looks like it's coming from the front, maybe coming from the timing cover seal. I don't know, blah, blah, blah. He goes, oh, I love that engine. That's what I work on. Yeah, this is great. Next thing I know, he's got the hose out, the sprayer. He's washing it, cleaning it. We're running it. He's looking. He goes, see right there. So he can see that's the front crankshaft seal. It's round, and see it's leaking in the bottom here. You could probably go, 50,000 miles and just make a mess under your truck. But he goes, we should fix that. But I'm involved in this, right? I'm looking at it. So anyways, long and short of the story is, going to go back in there on Monday. We're gonna do the seal. It's a fairly big job because you got to take off a lot of the shit in the front of the engine and whatnot. But even to this day, I guess my point in all this is I still have some fear because I'm a big boy. I'm on my own, So what all of a sudden if your oil's gushing all over the road and you're in the middle of Baja, Mexico, or out in the, I don't know, near the Green River in Utah, out 60 miles from pavement? You got to have some sense of to hold it together and be like, okay, what are my options here? So
I agree. My opinion might be a little bit overkill to some people, but I feel like you should at least have all the fluids for your vehicle in your vehicle with you if you're on a trip like this.
Absolutely.
I have literally a bag that has nothing but fluids in it.
Yep.
I mean, not just oil, brake
grease,
fluid,
98, brake fluid, transmission, all of that, radiator fluid, all that stuff.
And that may seem like a pain in the butt to bring. Well, at least for my vehicle, all my fluids fit in a bag this big. So it's not a lot. It's still inconvenient. But when you're in the middle of nowhere and you need oil, there's nothing else you can use but oil.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. You can't go in and, be like, well, let me see. I got some olive oil spray. Maybe I can, no. So you're right. Sometimes I tell people this all the time. Usually what will stop you dead in your tracks, no matter where you are, is the weak $2 part.
Mm-hmm.
In our minds, we envision, boom, the engine blows up, the pistons fly into the upper atmosphere, and it's a catastrophic event. That doesn't happen very often. It's usually some little cotter pin or something goes boop. I remember driving across country in a Land Rover one time, and I get this rumble, and all of a sudden, the next thing I know, I pull over the side of the road, my drive shaft looks like it's all screwed. I'm underneath the truck. All it was the little pin that holds the drive thing in. It was just like this 10-cent part. That's what's gonna fail. And those are the things that the more you're involved in the build process, the more of those kind of things you're going to think about. Are you going to think about all of this stuff? No. No. I mean, in reality, no. You're going to never going to be able to. But so I am a big proponent to get back on track here. I think it's time and money, but I'm a huge proponent of build. And I'm also, by the way, a big fan, as you probably can tell by what I drive, of older model vehicles, things that you can actually look. It's not about the glitz and the glam. We talk about, you and I talk about this all the time on, buying, Overland gear, but it's the same in the truck. The more modern it is, the more computerized it is, the more things it's got to get plugged into, the harder it is to know what's going on. And sometimes even in your build, you can overbuild. Like, I'll give you an example. This current truck I'm in now compared to my last one is actually less technical. It's less glitzy than my prior truck, because I go, wait a minute, I don't really need all this stuff. It's just something else to break. Let's go more basic. Well,
I'm going to tell you one of the worst things that an overlander or nomadic traveler can hear is when their car breaks down, or their rig or whatever it is breaks down. They find a mechanic in the middle of nowhere. They find this mechanic, and he's really excited to look and work on your vehicle. And he says, "We've never had one come in here like this before."
That's right.
So he's excited because he's like, I get to play around with this new rig.
Right.
I want a vehicle that I'm not a mechanic. I know a lot about mechanics. I can fix a lot of things, but I can't fix everything. I am going to have to, at some point or level, rely on a mechanic. And I want my chances of the mechanic being able to look at my vehicle and be comfortable and get the job done and repair it to be easy.
Yeah.
I don't want him
easy, to. By the way, also translates into cheaper.
Yes. And faster, because if I've got this particular vehicle coming in, if I'm used to Fords and Chevys and Jeeps or whatever, I've probably got the most common parts right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, I saw a video yesterday. I had to laugh. Some guy is overlanding and traveling around in a Lamborghini Urus, and he's got his bed set up in the bed. And I'm thinking, going, wow. But there's a perfect example of, man, you show up at some dealer, the chances of them having a Lamborghini part are about zero.
If he's driving around in a Lamborghini, he's probably got concierge service on his phone.
Maybe. You've seen it all.
I've seen some crazy expensive vehicles. Porsches used to be a big deal. Now Porsches are like Subarus to me. As far
There
as
were about
seeing,
6 of them. There were 6 of them that I saw, anyways, at Overland Expo that were all set up Overland with rooftop tents and everything. So yeah, oh yeah, the Porsche has hit the Overland market.
they're dirt cheap too. I don't know the reason why, but if you looked at what their sticker price was, and then you went online and looked at how much those trucks go for, it is crazy. I can right now get a really nice Porsche truck for under 10 grand. Easy.
Interesting.
Same thing with Range Rovers.
So you're telling me we're gonna not do the Earth Roamers.
I told you, I already told them no.
Oh, damn.
Nobody's offered us Earth Roamers who's listening. Just,
We're just kidding.
In case people don't know that we're joking.
I kind of wish we were. Now, if our podcast was getting as many listens as Joe Rogan, they probably would have given us Earth Roamers.
Right. So I'm going to ask you some questions in regards to what we're talking about, Mike. Kind of rapid fire.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, I talked about the guy who had basically limitless income, and he could just basically take whatever advice you gave him and run with it. So I want to change that scenario. Retirement is coming soon, but hey, I'm going to be on a fixed income. I'm not making money like that. So I'm going to be doing this in bits and pieces. What's the first thing I should dig in and work on? I want to be able to drive around the state, because I'm still working. But I want to be able to use this vehicle. I want to go to the forest and everything. What should be my first move?
Well, I don't know how far back in this you want me to go, but number one, no matter what vehicle it is, the vehicle itself has to be solid. The base vehicle has to be reliable.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So do not spend $200 on a Rotopax when you need to spend $200 on brake pads.
Right.
That would be my example. Number two, comfort. You're going to be miserable if you're not comfortable, and what definition of comfortable is different for everybody, but likely that has to do with sleeping, eating, and I hate to say this in the modern world, but it probably has to do with, phone. So it probably has to do with some kind of power. So, bare minimum in a rig, I think you're going to need nowadays in overlanding, you're probably going to need a refrigerator, a comfortable bed, and something to power the refrigerator and recharge your phone or whatever. So those are pretty important stuff. Obviously, you and I talk about medical kit and things like that. I could keep going on, though. I mean, I know it sounds like a lot. Recovery gear. You got to be able to get yourself out of something. Don't rely on other people.
Yeah, I was going to go a lot more basic, and I wasn't going to go as far back.
Okay.
If someone were asking me this question, my recommendation would have been do your suspension and tires first. That will allow you to have your vehicle is basically ready to go anywhere right there. Yep. At that point, they can use not a refrigerator, but a cooler. At this point, they could sleep in the back of the car. But a person, they just got the vehicle and they want to be able to do something, do the suspension and the wheels first.
Tires, by the way, are probably the one piece of equipment that is more critical to getting through stuff than anything else. And people, right. I hear people talk about getting lockers and upgrades to their power and engine and all this stuff. It comes down to it, tires and how much air is in. I mean, it's crazy.
So that would be my first thing: tires and suspension.
Yeah, which goes along with what I said.
But I agree with everything that you said.
The vehicle's got to be solid. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Absolutely. And as far as the suspension and wheels, the reason why I chose them is because people a lot of times come back to that and start with something first. And if you upgrade other things first, you end up doing your suspension twice.
Yep.
Whereas if you had got the lift and got the tires you wanted, you would have only bought one suspension, you'd have only bought one set of tires and one set of wheels.
Yep. I know people that go on they'll get bumpers and they, because they want a recovery thing. So they want a winch. So they get the winch and the bumper. And guess what? All that weight, now they got the wrong suspension.
And can we agree on something, bro? I part of your suspension when I say that, when you get your suspension and wheels, I'm also including brakes. You need to upgrade your brakes. That is the elephant in the room for a large majority of these overlanders out here. They're driving around with insufficient braking system.
Yep, agreed. Because oftentimes they're also driving around overweight.
Right. Right. Exactly. I would venture to say well over 50% of the people who claim the title of an overlander, that's one of the main weaknesses in their rig, no matter how pretty it looks. You go check their brakes, they got factory brakes on there.
Yep. No, totally true.
And it's just basic physics. If you are increasing the weight and you haven't increased the braking, you're going to travel further. Yep. So you're not going to stop when you think you want to stop. Yep. And if you're traveling the world, you're going to be you're not going to be on pristine concrete all the time. So that's a big deal. Don't play around with your brakes. So again, my recommendation is suspension and wheels, and that includes brakes.
Yep.
And if you get those things done, you can kind of piecemeal the whole rest of the vehicle together if you had to.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know some people who, like we mentioned,
Will.
Right. He still ain't got a tent. And I don't think he wants a tent.
Nope.
And he's been more places than most people who claim the moniker
of a... Been to more places than 99% of the people. Mm-hmm. Doesn't have a rooftop tent. Doesn't have like any kind of glitz and glam. I mean, because he's doing it.
And he's still having a ball.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
We got to have Sir William on the podcast.
I think that's a great idea.
Should have had him while you and him were camping together in Baja.
I know. That's good. Yeah, probably. I just saw him last weekend, so we'll be running into him again, I'm sure, soon.
So I think we've covered the basics. We're going to come back to this again and talk about some other portions. But the basics that I guess people should be getting from this is, out of the three, building it yourself is the best. If you have someone else build it, it needs to be a partnership so you have an idea of what's going on. You need to educate yourself on what's going on in the vehicle so that if there's any problems, there's a chance that you might be able to fix it. And if there's some things you want to say it, Mike.
And if you're just buying it straight out, make sure you get the factory tour for many hours.
Right. And if you're going to get one of those vehicles where, they've built it completely out for you, there's only a handful of places you should be going. Don't just go to anybody.
No.
Like you were mentioning AEV before for your Jeep. And like AEV is practically like buying the vehicle from the factory the way
That's correct. It still has a warranty on
their
it.
tolerances, the warranty, everything.
I've worked with AAV. I mean, we're sitting here joking about Earth Roamer and the big Overland rig, but we're joking about them because they're premier. They're great things. They've thought about all of it. Like, it costs a lot of money, yeah, but it's damn good. So, yeah, but I agree with Phil. There are, how do I say it nicely? There are bad things out there too. I'm not going to mention a brand, but I saw a trailer as an example at Overland Expo that was, I think you and I could have done it with a hacksaw, duct tape, and some zip ties. And I mean, I was like shocked, and it was complete, so it had, a rooftop tent, and it had a slide for the fridge and all stuff. And I'm thinking, well, somebody's going to go in there and buy this thing and think that they're all ready to go, all set up. I'm thinking the first trail they go down, this thing's in trouble.
I've been thinking this for a long time. There needs to be some formal government agency, and I hate that I just said what I just said, but there needs to be some formal government agency that regulates RVs and trailers.
I think there is that does. I want to say there's something with RVs possibly, but like these trailers and stuff seem to be on the outskirts of that.
The RV one is not it's not government. It's a bunch of the big RV companies got together and basically came up with their own little Declaration of Independence. Right.
That makes sense. Yeah,
and it was more to differentiate themselves from the other brands. It wasn't to like bring the industry up.
I've seen some brand new RVs. I think we talked about this on a podcast. I went with a buddy and to pick up her RV actually, and from the factory, and I've never seen anything built so bad in my life. I mean, I opened up the storage compartment. I look up, all the aluminum welds were burned. So obviously the guy doing it doesn't know how to weld very well. And it was only welded on one side. They didn't take the time to weld both sides of the frame, just one side. Everything's put together with staples. And I mean staples. It's like balsa wood and staples. And I hate to say it, but this has morphed into the Overland market because there's almost no differentiation anymore.
That just made me think of another significant reason why you want to build or at least be a participant in the build. I'm embarrassed to say it, but this is for the audience. There's been many times that I've been working on my rig and I had it completely put together. And then I was putting my stuff back and I realized that I didn't lock tight the bolts. So you know what I did? Those 4 hours that I just spent, I spent 2 hours taking it back apart and another 4 hours putting it back apart, Loctiting every single screw and nut and bolt or whatever. When you take it to the outfitter, he ain't about to take your vehicle back apart because he didn't use Loctite.
No, that's a fear. And this is reality. This is what, like, it looks good in the showroom.
Mm-hmm.
It'll look good sitting in your driveway. Try to get out of the glitz of this whole thing and think about,
this is a tool.
One of the references I use is whatever it is, whether it's a trailer, a Jeep, a big truck like mine, just pretend that you're going to take that thing and stick it in a wash machine. And it's just going to go like this.
I'm still in that, Mike.
What's that?
I'm still in that. I like that.
Yeah.
It is. That's exactly what it's like.
Do. I don't care where
it's like putting gym shoes in a washing machine.
Yes. I don't care whether you're in Mexico or you're in Utah or you're in some backcountry discovery route in Oregon. We've all been there. That's what happens. I got a buddy of mine calls it every time because he's got cats on board. And every time he goes, tells the cats, okay, today we're traveling. It's a travel day. We're going to have an earthquake all day. Yep. So
and a good example. Yeah. A good example specifically of that is, I'm not going to mention the brand, But I originally, if people go back years and years on my Instagram, they'll see these very expensive lights on my vehicle. And if you're wondering what happened to them, I was on one of them roads, corrugated trails, and it shook my lights, and the lights went out on me. I went to 4-wheel parts. I bought some Pro Comp lights that look almost the same. Never had another issue with my lights.
Yep.
And you don't, so that's kind of like everything all together. Just because it's expensive doesn't mean it's the best. You need to actually take things and test them out to make sure that they work before you do anything big. That's all.
Yeah, just assume that you're going in a wash machine, everything's going to unscrew itself. Everything that can fall is going to fall. Everything that's going to loosen up is going to loosen up. And that's true of both the vehicle itself, the mechanicals of it, your build, your possible home part of the build, everything, electronics, I mean, how well does any kind of electronics hold up when you go like this, nonstop? So things to think about.
Another good reason to have a coach.
Yep. I agree. And the best coaches are ones that don't have necessarily a vested interest other than, usually you're paying them to consult with you, but their only goal is to have you succeed at your adventure, whatever that is.
Your vehicle is like one of their paintings. So they want the best for you.
Exactly. That's right.
You're going to go out with that vehicle. I don't want your vehicle to fail. I don't want you complaining.
No, because at the end of the day, we want to create a whole mess of great overlanders that we can go and travel with on the road. So, I want to see you guys down the road somewhere, and I want you to be successful and not be like, oh my God, nothing's working. Anyways, that's today's podcast.
You have any last words, Mike?
Get out there and do it.
All right, guys, you know what I'm going to say. Stay safe, tread lightly, and hopefully we'll see you here or on a trail soon.
You have been listening to Waypoint Overland's Random Waypoints. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.